Before gravity had a name, before relativity was drawn into equations, Africa had already mapped the motion of the universe. Not with numbers, but with spirit. Long before physics became science, it was sacred. In temples older than most nations, among people whose stories stretch back beyond time, the universe was not seen as a machine, but as a rhythm. A living, breathing force governed by divine laws not written on chalkboards, but in starlight, in breath, in silence. Africa spoke of Ma'at, not just as a goddess, but as the balance that held existence together, from the swirling galaxies above to the beating heart within. The Yoruba understood Ashe, the invisible current that pulsed through all things, a power you could feel in the hush of a prayer, in the movement of drums, in the quiet after a storm. And the Dogon whispered of Nomo, the sacred word that birthed matter, the sound that formed the very bones of creation. These were not metaphors. These were the original equations, not drawn in ink, but danced in ceremony, passed through lineage, held in the memory of land and spirit. The ancients did not divide the sacred from the scientific. The laws that moved the stars were the same laws that guided justice, community, music, breath. There was no gap between spirit and logic, between ritual and reason. The cosmic law was not an abstract concept. It was life itself, unfolding with every sunrise, renewing with every rainfall, correcting itself through cycles and silence. It was the architecture of existence, upheld not by force, but by harmony. This law was not stored in scrolls. It was carried in the body, in the way elders walked, in the way midwives spoke, in the way children were taught to greet the land. It was sung in rituals that honored the unseen. It was carved into temples that aligned with the stars. It was poured into libations offered to earth and sky. The cosmic law was everywhere, because the cosmos was alive, and Africa remembered how to listen to it. Before the world measured atoms, the ancients listened to vibration. Before math modeled the curve of the earth, they stood barefoot on its skin and felt its pulse. What we now call energy, frequency, and resonance, they lived as breath, as spirit, as word. And in doing so, they understood something science is only beginning to rediscover, that creation is not a formula, it is a conversation. This is the story of that law, not a myth, not a forgotten tale, but a truth older than time, waiting to be remembered. Because before physics, there was spirit, and that spirit still speaks. In the sacred cosmology of Kemet, what the world now calls ancient Egypt, there was no greater law than Ma'at. She was not simply a goddess, she was the blueprint of the universe itself. Ma'at governed both the alignment of stars in the heavens and the alignment of truth within the human soul. Her presence was not a doctrine, it was a force, invisible yet immovable. To live outside of Ma'at was not to sin in the religious sense, but to fall out of harmony with creation's deepest rhythm. For the ancients, the world did not collapse through war or famine alone. It collapsed when Ma'at was broken. Her symbol was a single feather, deceptively light, infinitely powerful. In the afterlife, it was not your wealth or status that mattered. It was your heart weighed against Ma'at's feather. Too heavy with lies, injustice, or greed, then your soul was devoured, erased from the eternal cycle. But if your heart floated in balance, you passed on into peace. This was not punishment, it was physics. It was spiritual gravity. To live with integrity was to align yourself with the cosmos. To lie, to oppress, to live in ego was to introduce chaos into the system, and that chaos would return to you. Ma'at was recited daily, not as superstition, but as moral calibration. The 42 declarations of innocence, ancient affirmations of right living, were whispered in temples, spoken at sunrise, internalized by judges, scribes, and citizens alike. I have not stolen. I have not lied. These were not commands to fear, they were reminders to remember. That the same principle holding the sun in orbit also governed how you spoke to your neighbor, how you treated a stranger, how you responded to power. In Ma'at, there was no separation between the spiritual and the ethical, between the personal and the cosmic. She was balance in all things: breath, justice, emotion, time. Her law echoed through architecture, music, mathematics, and memory. You could not build a pyramid or compose a hymn without considering her alignment. She was the measure not only of physical structures, but of moral ones. To understand Ma'at is to understand that ancient Africa did not see the universe as indifferent or cold. It saw a living system, precise, relational, and intelligent. The laws of physics were also the laws of conscience. Harmony was not an aesthetic, it was a necessity. And Ma'at was the key. She reminds us that truth is not an opinion, it is a force. That balance is not weakness, it is power. That justice is not invented by man, but inscribed in the very structure of the stars. To forget Ma'at is to forget what holds us together. But to remember her, to live with lightness of heart and clarity of soul, is to return to the source. To live without Ma'at was to fall out of tune with creation. But to live with her was to sing in harmony with the universe itself. Among the Yoruba people of West Africa, creation is not a static event or a distant myth. It is a living process, pulsing with the invisible force they call Ashe. Ashe is not a thing, but the power within all things. It is breath, it is motion, it is the subtle hum beneath the drumbeat of existence. If Ma'at is balance, Ashe is vibration, the energy that carries intention into form, spirit into sound, thought into action. To speak is to use Ashe, to dance, to create, to bless, all are acts of Ashe. It is the current of life itself, flowing through gods, ancestors, humans, plants, stones, and even silence. Ashe is everywhere, but it is not chaotic. It responds to alignment. Like frequency tuning a radio, the Yoruba teach that when your thoughts, words, and actions harmonize, Ashe flows stronger through you. A person of high character, called one with Iwa Pele, is not just kind, but deeply in tune with Ashe. Their presence uplifts, their voice carries weight, their steps seem to echo with the rhythm of the earth, not because of magic tricks or charisma, but because they are conduits of clean, focused power. To move without Ashe is to stand still in a moving world. It is to speak without impact, to live without vitality, to act without resonance. But when one lives with Ashe, intentionally and in balance, they become a tuning fork for creation itself. The Yoruba do not separate prayer from performance, nor ritual from rhythm. Ashe is summoned through drums that speak the language of ancestors, through chants that awaken the orishas, through dance that becomes more than movement, it becomes communication with the divine. Ashe is also deeply ethical, because what you send into the world returns. Words carry energy, not metaphorically, but literally. Blessings ripple, curses cling. The way you treat others, the tone you carry, the frequency of your being, all are expressions of your Ashe. This is not abstract philosophy, it is practiced reality. It is why elders speak deliberately, why rituals begin with silence, why names are spoken with care. Even in nature, Ashe reveals itself. A river flows not just with water, but with power. A tree is not just rooted in soil, but in spirit. The wind is not empty, it carries messages. This worldview is not superstition, it is deep science of the soul. Where modern physics sees energy and frequency, the Yoruba see Ashe, ancient knowledge, encoded in story, sustained through time. Ashe reminds us that we are not disconnected pieces, but vibrating nodes in a sacred web of life. What you do, say, and believe, all of it ripples outward. And the cleaner your vibration, the clearer your impact. In this, Ashe is not only a force, it is a responsibility. A charge to live in rhythm, to speak with purpose, to create with conscience. Because in the Yoruba understanding, power is not what you hold, it's what flows through you. And to live fully is to let Ashe move as it was always meant to, through the drumbeat of your life, resonating with the divine. To the Dogon people of Mali, creation began not with a bang, but with a breath. Not with light, but with sound. Nomo is the ancient force they name as the first vibration, the spoken word that carved form out of the void. He is not just a being, but a principle, the belief that sound gives birth to shape, that language is not a human invention, but a cosmic tool. In Dogon cosmology, Nomo is the divine voice, the breath that spoke the universe into being, and every echo since then has been part of that original command. Imagine a canyon where every word you speak returns to you, transformed by space and silence. That is how the Dogon understand Nomo, not as noise, but as vibration with consequence. Words do not disappear, they reverberate, they take shape, they form realities. To speak is to create, to chant is to rearrange matter. The sacred hollows where the Dogon hold rituals are not chosen by chance, they are acoustically alive. There, the voice does more than express, it activates. Chants in these spaces are believed to awaken sleeping energies, align the speaker with cosmic rhythm, and call hidden truths into the open. Nomo is both the origin and the guide. He is often symbolized as a twin, dual beings bound in one essence, representing the unity of sound and form, spirit and substance. Every element of life, from the rustling of leaves to the call of birds to the human heartbeat, echoes with his pattern. Nomo is the law that explains how intention becomes impact, how breath becomes building block, how silence, once pierced by sound, becomes fertile ground for life. In modern science, we speak of vibrational resonance, of frequency, of how sound waves influence water, shape sand, alter brainwaves. The Dogon were already living by these truths millennia ago. For them, it wasn't theory, it was survival, it was spirituality, it was structure. Every word carried weight, every syllable had power. To lie, to curse, to speak thoughtlessly was to unleash discord. But to speak with awareness, to align speech with truth, was to harmonize with the divine order itself. This is why in Dogon society, language is sacred. Elders speak sparingly. Names are not just identifiers, they are energies. Myths are not mere stories, they are encoded formulas of creation. Nomo teaches that to misuse speech is to misuse power, and to forget the sacredness of sound is to sever ourselves from the original breath that gave us life. Sound, carved form from void. That is the anchor. That is the mystery. The Dogon remind us that creation is not just about what is seen, but what is heard, and more deeply, what is spoken with intent. In every whisper, there is a wave. In every chant, a change. And in every word, a world waiting to be born. Nomo is still speaking. In the rustle of wind, the rumble of thunder, the echo of our voices, calling ourselves back into alignment. In the heart of southern Africa lives a law older than empires, yet more relevant than ever. Ubuntu. More than a word, Ubuntu is a worldview, a rhythm of life, a sacred thread that binds one soul to another. It is not about kindness alone. It is about structure, about reality. Ubuntu says, I am because we are. It is the invisible architecture of being that declares no one exists in isolation. Every thought, every action, every consequence is shared, braided into the collective fabric of life. In this truth, the individual does not vanish, but is only made whole in relation to the community. Ubuntu is not merely social etiquette, it is a cosmic law. To harm another is to harm yourself, for you are them. In this truth lies a challenge and a freedom. Your well-being is inseparable from the well-being of your neighbor, your tribe, your environment. Whether you light a fire or start a war, its warmth or its ash will reach others, and in turn, you. It is a truth echoed in ecology, in quantum physics, in ancestral memory. All things are linked. The universe is not a battlefield, it is a body. This law of unity is not abstract in practice. It shows up in the daily rituals of life. A shared meal where the last to arrive still eats. A greeting that affirms existence through community. Sawubona, I see you. And the answer, Ngikona, therefore I am here. There is no self without witness, no healing without togetherness. The circle of hands around a fire is not just warmth, It is renewal. Ubuntu lives in those circles, in the space between people where empathy turns into ethics and presence becomes power. The ancient builders of Ubuntu did not build alone. They built with intention to sustain each other. Ubuntu is the technology of human connection. And it is not sentimental, it is survival. Tribes survived not because the strong dominated the weak, but because the strong lifted the weak, and in lifting were themselves lifted. This is the law of reciprocity, not as charity, but as necessity. Even the stars remind us of Ubuntu. Galaxies are families of light, spiraling in harmony. Trees speak through roots. Bees dance directions. The wind touches all it passes. The universe does not compete, it cooperates. And those who live by Ubuntu are not simply peaceful, they are powerful because they are many moving as one. In a world fragmented by isolation and greed, Ubuntu stands as a sacred defiance. A reminder that unity is not naive, it is natural. This law is a mirror held up to humanity. It asks, can you see yourself in others? Can you treat another's suffering as your own? Can you rejoice in someone else's rising as if it were your own victory? In these questions lies the path back to harmony, because the truth is simple and ancient and eternal. I am because we are, and so are you. In the spiritual geometry of the Congo people, time does not move in straight lines. It turns. It turns like seasons, like breath, like a wheel. This turning is the essence of the Dikenga, the sacred cosmogram that explains the nature of life, death, and rebirth. It is a circle marked by 4 cardinal points: sunrise, midday, sunset, midnight. These are not only times of day, they are stages of existence: birth, maturity, death, and return. To understand the Dikenga is to understand that the universe is not built on endings, but on transformations. This symbol, often etched into the earth or painted on sacred walls, is more than art. It is instruction. It is compass. It teaches that nothing in creation is wasted, that what we bury in the ground becomes part of the soil's memory, that the body returns to earth and the spirit returns to source, only to rise again. Even stars, when they fade, become the dust of new worlds. The sun sets, but always rises. This is not optimism. It is order. At dusk, when the sky softens and the world begins to turn inward, the Congo people dance the dance of ancestors. It is not just celebration. It is continuity. Each step honors those who walked before. Each rhythm connects the past to the present. Ancestors are not gone. They are simply in another quadrant of the circle. The Dikenga shows that the dead are not behind us. They are ahead, waiting at the next turn. And so, to live well is not only for this life, but for the next version of it, where one's deeds echo and shape future paths. Time in the Dikenga is not a ticking clock. It is a sacred cycle. You do not run out of it. You return through it. This understanding reshapes how one approaches grief, legacy, even progress. There is no permanent loss, only transition. There is no absolute failure, only the need to return to the beginning and try again. It is the cosmic permission to be reborn, to evolve, to change shape without losing self. This philosophy predates modern physics, yet aligns beautifully with what science now observes, that energy cannot be destroyed, only changed. That nothing in the universe truly vanishes. The Congo knew this, not through telescopes, but through tradition, through rhythm, through the wisdom of the soil. Their knowledge was not theoretical, it was lived. To live by the Dikenga is to trust the process of time, to honor each stage of the journey, whether rising or falling. It is to know that youth will become age, day will become night, but night too will become dawn. It is to believe that your spirit has walked this circle before, and will again. In a world obsessed with speed and endings, the Dikenga invites us to spiral inward, to see beyond linear thinking. To understand that our stories, like our souls, are part of something endlessly renewing. A dance of cycles, a law of transformation, a circle that does not close but turns again and again and again.
Among the Sotho and Sawana peoples, there is a law that governs more than behavior. It governs being. It is called Sariti, often translated as shadow or aura. Sariti is much more than metaphor. It is your presence, the invisible weight of your integrity, your spirit's echo, your moral fingerprint in the world. It is the energy you bring into a room before you speak. It is how animals sense your nature, how children feel your honesty, how elders measure your worth without needing your resume or riches. Sariti is not performance, it is presence. It cannot be faked, bought, or borrowed. It is cultivated through character, intention, humility, and truth. Some say it is like a magnetic field surrounding each person, responding to their actions and choices. Others describe it as the spiritual scent of a soul, unmistakable, unforgettable. And though it is unseen, it leaves a trail. The Sotho say that when you walk with clean Sariti, the path behind you stays lit for others. This essence is not static. It grows or diminishes based on how you live. Generosity strengthens it. Dishonesty dims it. Every act of compassion expands it. Every act of cruelty stains it. Sariti is the ultimate witness. You may deceive others, but not your field. It remembers. It radiates. In this, it becomes both compass and mirror, guiding you toward what feels right and revealing what must be healed. It teaches that morality is not merely social, it is spiritual physics. In ritual, Sariti is invoked not through spectacle, but through stillness. A breath taken with intention, a word spoken with honesty, a silence kept in discipline. There are no grand gestures, only deep alignment. This is why, in traditional societies, a person with strong Sariti is respected without needing to announce themselves. They walk gently, but their energy walks ahead of them. They speak calmly, but their truth rings louder than any shout. Sariti is also collective. A family can have it. A nation can lose it.
A people can protect it by how they treat each other, how they honor their past, how they plant into the future. It reminds us that every interaction is sacred, that no deed is too small to matter, and that presence is power, not because it dominates, but because it resonates. In modern terms, we might talk of vibes, energy, or aura. But the Sotho and Tswana have long understood what science is only beginning to explore, that we emit more than heat and motion. We emit meaning. We emit memory. And when our lives are in tune with that deeper current, the world responds. Doors open. Struggles soften. Others feel safe near us, not because we are perfect, but because we are real. Your integrity radiates like a field no eye can see. That is the anchor of Serity. It is the law of presence, not as performance, but as truth. In a world obsessed with image, Serity returns us to essence, and in that return we remember, who you are is felt before it is seen.
Long before modern science placed sensors in space and equations on chalkboards, Africa's ancestors mapped the invisible, not with machines, but with memory, ritual, and rhythm. What we now call vibration, they called nomo. What we call energy, they embodied as ase. Fields, frequencies, resonance, and time itself, all were understood not in sterile labs, but in living communities through ceremonies, chants, and careful listening to the universe's breath. The elders didn't need microscopes to see the unseen. They felt it, they lived in it, they spoke with it. Modern physics tells us that everything is energy, that sound shapes form, that time curves, that nothing is truly still. These are revelations in textbooks today, but among the Dogon, the Congo, the Yoruba, the Sotho, and many others, this was not discovery. It was memory. It was the very fabric of daily life. They knew that the universe is a conversation between matter and meaning. They knew that rhythm organizes reality, that intention directs flow, and that harmony sustains health, physically, socially, cosmically. Science speaks of quantum entanglement. The ancients knew Ubuntu, the sacred interweaving of all beings. Science maps cosmic cycles. The Congo walked the Dikenga. Science explores biofields. The Sotho invoked Seriti. The language has evolved, but the laws remain unchanged. The core idea that we are more than flesh, that our words carry power, that the unseen governs the seen, pulses through both disciplines. One wears a lab coat, the other ancestral cloth. But they study the same song, just in different keys. This is not to romanticize tradition, nor to dismiss innovation. It is to bridge the ancient and the modern, to realize that science and spirituality were never enemies, only different dialects of the same truth. The African worldview never demanded blind belief. It demanded alignment. The elders didn't worship the elements. They studied them with reverence. They observed stars, tracked seasons, measured time in shadow and water, and honored the balance that allowed life to thrive. And so we stand at a powerful crossroads. As the world rediscovers the truths of frequency, vibration, and energetic connection, Africa's ancient wisdom waits, not to be validated,
but to be remembered. This is not about mythology. It is about science that wore the face of spirit, about physics that spoke in proverbs, about knowledge so deep it danced instead of diagrammed. The science of the ancestors is not a relic. It is a rhythm, still moving, still murmuring, still inviting us to listen differently. To understand that perhaps the greatest discoveries are not always new. Sometimes they are just old truths spoken again, in a language our hearts still know.
The cosmic law of Africa is not a forgotten relic buried beneath the dust of ancient temples. It is a living memory, encoded in rivers, echoed in drums, and whispered in the breath between chants. This law was not invented, it was observed. It was not written in ink, but inscribed in rhythm, the natural intelligence of the earth, the sky, and the soul. And while modern civilization claims progress through data and equations, Africa has long known that the true advancement of humanity lies not in control, but in alignment. Science and spirit were never separate in the African worldview. They were two sides of the same knowing, a sacred unity where energy and ethics, frequency and feeling, law and life moved together. The law of Ma'at balanced stars and hearts alike. Ashe flowed through words and winds. Nomo turned sound into shape. Ubuntu wove souls into community. Dekenga cycled death into rebirth. Sariti radiated from the core of character. These were not myths. They were mechanisms, systems of harmony as precise as any formula. To live in harmony with truth, with energy, with creation itself, that is the highest form of civilization. A civilization that does not dominate nature, but moves with it, that does not forget its dead, but dances with them, that does not fear the unseen, but honors it. And in this, Africa offered not just a path, but a pattern, a way to remember what it means to belong to a universe that listens as much as it speaks. So let the world recall what it once knew, that long before laws were carved into stone or typed into constitutions, they were written in the stars. That before gravity was named, Ma'at already balanced. That before string theory mapped vibration, the Dogon had already heard Nomo. The code still lives, not just in books or ruins, but in bloodlines, rituals, and breath. In the quiet strength of ancestors and the sudden clarity of truth when it returns like thunder. If this story resonated, it means the rhythm still lives in you too. Don't let it fade. Speak it. Share it. Pass it forward. Let the world remember what Africa has always carried. The law, the rhythm, the breath of balance. Like, comment, subscribe, and carry the code with you. It was never lost, only waiting to be spoken again.